I have to be honest with you. In the modern times, in these days, where in the old days, I think attorneys and banks used to be executors quite often.
Right.
I don't see it very often at all. Usually I'll see family members. And when they're concerned about family members, they might have a second person, whether it be a second person of the family or a professional. But oftentimes they'll think, look, we're going to pick an honest, decent family member. And even though he or she might not know the duties and obligations of a fiduciary, of an executor or an executrix if it's female, the good news is I trust my family member then to go hire the right professionals.
Right.
We're going to hire the CPA. We're going to hire the attorney, hire the financial consultant. But we're not going to pay them their fiduciary fee. We're going to pay them to assist the family member.
Now, do you ever, or have you ever in the past said to a client, especially with a bigger estate, I disagree with the decision you've made here. Your estate is way too complex. The trust instruments that you're asking for are very, very involved. You really need someone who's, an institution or some type of professional to handle this. Have you ever done that?
No, I've never disagreed. I've given them parameters, what's involved, and stating that maybe what are the benefits of an institution versus an individual or otherwise. But ultimately, I always tell them one item.
The testator gets the
You're
final word.
There's only one boss in the room.
Right.
That's the client, and the client's decision is always right. Concern is that oftentimes they'll pick a very nice relative.
Right.
Who maybe isn't organized, isn't too astute with handling matters. And it's not so much that the person they've chosen is going to take an ill path intentionally, that they're going to abscond with monies or not appropriately attempt to address the matters. The concern is that the family member they've picked, while he or she might be a swell individual, they're not astute and organized and efficient. They're not going to address matters, not intentionally, but just because they're not able to do it. What happens with an estate plan, I always tell people, in bold print in the documents, I say the bold print is limited. And they'll say, what's it limited to, Mr. Thierman? It's limited to names. Mm-hmm. No matter how good the document is, it's only as good as the names in there. Who you have is the fiduciary. Who you have is the beneficiaries. If you've got the right people in your documents, that's the first half of the battle. The next plan, the next path as to the estate plan is, what have you put together and spelled out? And have you been definitive? You've got to be definitive. You've got to take a hard path to tell people what they're getting, when they're getting it, and how it's happening. But they're hard decisions to make, and oftentimes people pull back a little because it's difficult to make those decisions. So that's a concern. Your estate plan addresses your life and your assets that you've made during your entire life. Mm-hmm. Your income taxes, that addresses what you're paying in income tax, and that you address every year. Your will, they don't like to address wills, but it's like, wait a second, your income tax return, which is of less importance, that addresses the income tax. This addresses your entire life savings, as well as your life and care if you're disabled or ill. Mm-hmm. While you might not have to see the lawyer as often as the accountant, you should, every few years, review and refresh what you have to make sure, even if everyone's still a good egg, the facts and circumstances might have changed. Your financial assets might have changed. The people you've relied on may have changed. Yes, you should review your documents every few years, not for the lawyer's benefit, but for your benefit and your loved ones.
And the one thing you didn't mention just now, which I think is significant, is the tax law might have changed.
Yes.
Where something, and it could be beneficial. If you, for example, on gifting.
Well, I always tell people, if I was a politician, you never have to review your will, because all the politicians, they're going to help you tax-wise. Now, if you believe that, you never have to review the situation. However, if you believe that the only person looking out tax-wise for you is not the politician,
right,
but is you, the individual, yes, you need to review your documents every few years, because tax laws always change, and not putting the politician to the side for the better.